Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Startup Network podcast. Joining me today is Jordan Marinkovich, Platform Manager of Innovation.Works. Jordan supports the growth of software, hardware, and health tech startups throughout Southwestern Pennsylvania. She has a passion for creating innovative, equitable opportunities and a community of support to advance entrepreneurs to their next stage of growth. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ashley. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. I would love to have you start off by sharing with our listeners more about who you are and what you do at Innovation Works.
Yeah. My name is Jordan Marinkovich. I am the platform manager for Innovation.Works. We are um, venture development, as I like to call us. We're part VC, part economic development. We receive some funding from the state of Pennsylvania to invest in startups to create jobs and tax revenue that goes back to the state. So we're a little bit different than most venture organizations out there. And what platform means for us is really post-investment founder support. And that can really range uh, day by day on what that means. But the core of what I do is really making connections and building community for our founders and our mentors, our professional services network, our investor network, and really diving in on what the needs and the trends are for early stage startups.
Oh, I love it. And I really find it interesting about what Innovation Works, where, as you said, combining venture and economic development. So would love to hear more about that if you could give some more insight with our listeners.
Yeah. So Innovation.Works is part of a statewide organization called the Ben Franklin Technology Partners. There's four of us located across the state. Innovation.Works is called something different due to some creative rebranding that we had to have many years ago. But we're part of that network, and I think we're actually one of the first like state funded organizations like us. I know that many other states have adopted this in New York and Arizona, and really to push entrepreneurship. But at the time, our organization was created because Pennsylvania was kind of seeing that change from when Pittsburgh was really known as like a steel town, and creating on oil and manufacturing, and those jobs went away, and the tax revenue from those organizations went away, and the state got creative and started funding tech. Pittsburgh is uniquely suited for this, though, because we have really great local universities. Carnegie Mellon University, University of Pittsburgh are just, two of like six that we have locally, and those they pump out startups and IP like you wouldn't believe. And Pittsburgh is a great city to start a startup because there's
Mhm.
access to talent. The cost of living here compared to the Bay Area, is so so low that money goes a lot further. And if companies are producing some sort of medical or hardware device. We've got two major health systems locally that are really picking up innovations left and right. But we also still have a really rich manufacturing network in Pennsylvania, and specifically in Southwestern Pennsylvania. We've got like 3,000 small to medium-sized manufacturers within like a 2-hour drive of Pittsburgh.
My
So we see a lot
gosh.
of companies that are producing their goods here, especially after COVID, when there was that shift of supply chain. So it's really exciting, and we're kind of overlooked in Pittsburgh, but there's a lot to be proud of here.
Yes, and I was just going to say that I always love chatting with people in tech who are in the cities that, like you said, are overlooked or not given as much credit. And so I love hearing the advocacy and innovation that's going on within Pittsburgh of being a hub for all of these industries.
Yeah, like I said, Pittsburgh's amazing. We fall outside of kind of that, like, we're not really Midwest, but we kind of have that Midwest feel. We don't fit in with like the like East Coast, New York, Philadelphia, like DC vibe, and we're definitely not California in any way, shape, or form, weather or otherwise. So we're kind of in a league of our own, but I identify us as Midwest, and have fallen in with a really great crowd of like other Midwestern early stage investors who are really trying to build up the reputation of, what are typically considered flyover states and cities.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned within your role that you focus on community and support post-investment. And so I would love to hear more of what that looks like and what your focus and specialty really lies in.
Yeah, yeah. So we are we're super early stage investors. Our earliest checks come at our accelerator level. Our accelerator is called Alpha Lab, which is part of the whole continuum of funding that InnovationWorks is. And in our companies at that stage usually look like technical founders. Sometimes they're spinning up projects from universities, and they know their technology inside and out, but they've never run a business before. So their
Mhm.
guidance really needs to be in those business supports. So finding them the right connections for finance, finding them the right operations leaders, and right mentors to connect with there. Finding the right like salespeople. We have a lot of companies who are working on really cool technology, but they have no idea how to sell it, and they've never sold anything before. So really helping kind of sharpen those skills as they prepare to, raise a pre-seed or seed stage round. Community is something that I'm super passionate about. Because we are part economic development, we do have a geographic focus. So we invest in companies that are either based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or have some sort of small employee base. I think the threshold to, receive investment is they have to have like two employees here and maybe like a strategic business reason to set up an office here. So we do a lot of in-person events with our founders, and that's amazing to see just the community of people who have kind of been there and done that or been around, running their own startup for a little bit longer, taking these younger companies, sometimes these students who were just in an undergrad program, 4 to 6 months ago, and taking them under their wings and building kind of that network of support, sometimes commiseration. Being a founder can be isolating. So just having that is really important to us.
Yes, and I love what you shared there about the benefits of having that community because, like you said, it can be isolating and difficult and challenging to go through a startup life alone, and no founder should have to go through that alone. And so I love that you really focus on and prioritize that support and making sure that everyone who's building these companies within the area feel really taken care of.
Yeah, it's super important. We don't want anybody to feel isolated or alone. There's no reason for them at this point to feel isolated. Innovation Works itself has been around since 1999, so we've gone through, a million iterations of what startups look like and seeing startups fail and startups succeed. So there's no reason for us to not like learn from past mistakes, to help guide companies to kind of avoid those and connect them with people who can help them.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, community is one of your biggest passions. And so that's something I'd love to ask you and pick your brain on is when a founder is looking for a community to join, like what are some indicators that it's the right fit for them? I sometimes wonder if maybe there's almost like an analysis paralysis because there's so many options and it's like, how do I know which one is the best fit for me? And so I would love to hear from your perspective, I guess benefits or key indicators that makes a community a really great one to be a part of.
Yeah, so because our network is so tight in Pittsburgh, I rely heavily on like word of mouth recommendations.
Mhm.
That's usually the first indication that something is like of quality for me. And I'm super involved with our startups, and I want to get that constant feedback loop, even on what we're doing or people that we recommend, just making sure that we've got that two-way communication. So if something is falling short, we know to, kind of remove it from like our short list or just see what like the source of the problem might be there. So word of mouth is huge. Myself being like a community builder and wanting to find communities, um, we met through the Old Girls Club. Like I've gone and I've found so many great communities and people and connected my startups through there. I'm a member of some venture communities. One that I think is absolutely fantastic is an organization called V.I.A. It used to be called LTO, which is Let's Talk Operations. And just again, I've met so many wonderful people through that. I've made so many, um, gotten so many great recommendations of, workshop facilitators and mentors and just, you name it. Finding those groups has been extremely helpful to me. And then locally in Pittsburgh, we've got some great organizations that they want to help tech startups. There's um, a great group of like the Pitch and Run Club that meets every week, and or well, it's Pitch and Coffee during the really cold season in Pittsburgh coming out of. But community is a huge focus of kind of our little big city here.
Totally. And as you mentioned, I mean, community opens you up to opportunities and connections and people that you might not have had the opportunity to get connected to through otherwise. So just being able to find a few that you can be part of and be active in, I think is a really great thing to consider.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And it's, um, anytime we can grow outside of like our little bubble of Pittsburgh is always a fantastic opportunity. Um, I think Pittsburgh, like I said, we know we're great in Pittsburgh, but we don't do a great job of like voicing how wonderful Pittsburgh is outside of Pittsburgh. It can be a bit of a vacuum. So any chance we have to grow our network outside of our bubble is exciting to me.
Totally. And one thing I'd love to dive into further is the fact that, as you mentioned, which I think is so interesting, that you focus on like the very early stage founders of people who might be like just out of college or undergrad and being able to start their businesses, or they have no business expertise yet, which I think is really interesting. And so, from you working with these startups and with these founders who are in those shoes, what's your advice for them? So, like, say that there's someone listening to this episode who is that person, they identify as that, as someone who doesn't have the prior experience. What's your advice for them to go on the right path to success?
Yeah, I think it comes down to kind of two things. When we're looking as early as we do, sometimes like, the technology, it's like really new technology. There's not a good place to like do comparisons or things of that nature. So what we're really going off of sometimes, I joke, is like we go off of vibes with our founders. And one of the things that we look for is that our founders are like coachable. They want that feedback and they're remaining open to other experiences, opinions, opportunities. And two is that they have like a customer obsession with their product. So they know who they've done customer discovery. They know who their customers are. They understand the problem that they're solving deeply, and they can um, at least begin to communicate how to solve that problem. And that's what's really important to us is like you understand your customer, you're willing to go after them, but you're also willing to admit that you don't know what you don't know, and be open to the opportunities that come your way.
Yeah, and I think those are really great two pieces of advice, especially what you mentioned about being coachable, because I kind of feel like being in tech, whether you're a founder or have another position, that I feel like you kind of have to have a thick skin in some sense and be open to constructive criticism because any feedback you receive is always meant to improve what you're doing and provide a better solution and outcome for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's it's, you know, what is the you take 100 investor meetings and you get 99 no's or something, crazy like that.
Yeah.
So you have to have that really like thick skin. And there is, I think with being an entrepreneur, especially, as early as we see it, there's some level of like optimism that they have, that they want to go
Mhm.
out and change this problem that they've solved. And I don't want our founders to ever feel like they're losing that because that's what makes them so unique, and what makes their energy, especially when you're getting early stage investment. Like I said, it's vibes. It's going off the energy of that founder, that team. So like you don't want to lose that, but having a thick skin and just um, being willing to roll kind of with the punches and accept constructive feedback in a way that is like meaningful to you is the best thing you can do. I know it can be hard. And I've seen founders just, repeatedly like kind of punched meeting after meeting, or they're getting total whiplash from different mentors and things like that. But it's having, kind of that safe place to like digest everything you've just heard, and think about what really makes sense for you, your business strategically. And I think that's one thing that like Innovation Works is really good at offering our companies is like, okay, you've heard all of this, like come here, let's digest it. Let's see how this makes sense and how you can implement this into, your business.
And I think that is a really big piece that you brought up because I feel like it's so easy to get all of the strategy and all of the tips and all of the advice, but if you get all this information and don't know what to do with it, then it kind of just sits there. And so I really love that you mentioned the implementation piece because I think that's what helps people to take everything that they're learning and receiving and being able to actually put it into place and put it in action.
Yeah, I think there's so much advice out there, and even with like AI, there's all of that noise as well too.
Yeah.
So being able to like discern what's good or what makes sense is, kind of what sets good founders apart from ones who, may not be as, I don't want to say dedicated, but like who may not be as um, successful long term because they haven't figured out how to parse good advice with what is strategically right for them in the moment.
Yep, makes total sense. And I also love what you mentioned earlier too about looking for founders who have that customer obsession because that's kind of like the whole point of it is like you're building something to provide a solution to a problem that is very clearly prevalent. And so I think that's such a good reminder that you shared is to always be focused on the people that you're serving and ensure that everything that you're doing somehow relates to or benefits them in some way.
I think that's completely important. And I mean, we have companies that we see working as close as we do with universities. We see things that it's super cool tech, but nobody's ready to buy it yet. And they don't know how like they'll sell. And yeah, it's cool, but it's still a science project. It's how can you take that application and make it something that customers want to have or taking it from want to have to need to have,
Mhm.
and getting that like stickiness out in the market is really what differentiates like the science projects from like the actual businesses.
Yeah, and I actually love that phrase, science projects from businesses. I think that's a good way to phrase it is like it's just an idea if there isn't really any conviction behind it or any data or reasoning behind why it's going to work or why it's so needed right now.
Yeah, I think it comes back to like the customer discovery. I mean, even in our Alpha Lab program, like because we invest early, we invest in sometimes science projects, we always tear back customer discovery at the day one of the program that we offer, just because we found that companies can do like me search or they're not listening when they're doing these customer interviews. They're talking too much. They're not understanding what the problems are, what the current solutions on the market are. And, it's really important that they kind of go back to basics to
Mhm.
understand that, to be able to move forward and be able to sell properly.
Absolutely. And a question I'm curious about is if you find that most of the founders that you've worked with are solving for a problem that they've personally faced and experienced, or if it tends to be a mixture of like personal challenges that they've come across, plus like I guess more of like just a broader observation of challenges and thinking that there might be a solution for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. So we've seen both ends of the spectrum. We've seen, like I said, science projects that are really cool, that don't haven't done any customer discovery, and then we've seen founders come into to our program with an idea, with a challenge that they've faced themselves, like out in the world, and they're like, okay, I need to build this to solve this, and I already know my market, I know my audience because I am them, and sometimes those companies are the most successful because they already understand their channels, their
Yeah.
challenges, and they're able to get out there, but they may not have the same like technical ability to build that product.
Mhm.
So, we kind of see all sides of the spectrum with that.
Definitely. Yeah. And I feel like for the founders who personally live that problem, I mean, you probably see like such a spark and a passion for what they're building because they saw it firsthand and they knew what the struggles and challenges were.
Yes, yeah. So they've got that passion, they've got that understanding. It's easier for them to go out and, have that go-to-market plan because they understand again who the customers are, they know what channels they're available on and how to get to them. Sometimes they have their own network of, companies that are waiting for them to finalize the product to get out into market. So that sometimes that creates a little bit easier problem or easier solution for go to market, but the technical side of it, might need a little bit further development.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And so say that there is a founder listening to this episode who's located in Southwestern Pennsylvania and is really intrigued by Innovation Works and would like to learn more about the programs that you offer and how you can support them. Could you give an overview of what Innovation Works offers and how founders can really get involved?
Yeah. So Innovation Works, like I mentioned, we are a little bit of a different animal because of our state development. So we start very early with our companies. I mentioned we have a program called Alpha Lab that focuses kind of on four tracks of businesses. So we have a software track, a robotics track, hardware, which is anything that's like a non-robotic related product, and then we have life science and health tech, which really runs the gambit between like digital health through like therapeutic drug discoveries.
Hmm.
So in there we offer, a customer and capital boot camp, and up to 100K worth of investment. Innovation Works, we have our own kind of seed fund, if you will. I say seed kind of loosely because a seed fund in the Midwest is different than what a seed fund might look like in San Francisco. But that's really where I put a lot of my support in is kind of that seed fund stage. Again, comes with investment, and then access to our mentor network, our investor network, our events, and just a little bit of anything. I have a really hard time telling founders no. So I've gone down definitely some rabbit holes, to find resources and people to connect our mentors with. And then Innovation Works also has a growth stage fund called Riverfront Ventures, which starts at like seed plus through Series A. But those are just our investment vehicles. We also have a great manufacturing network. We have a team that sits, and they meet with local manufacturers. They provide grants to manufacturers and to our startups, to non-equity grants, to help them start getting their products produced. We have a residency program for robotics companies to come use. We have a state-of-the-art prototyping and manufacturing shop. Again, we take no equity in this. Companies can come and use this for free. We do have an application process because it's in high demand. But so there's a lot of different resources available at Innovation Works. They're all on our website. So if people want to get in touch with us or learn more about our programs, our website is really the best place to go, or LinkedIn. We've got a new marketing team and they've been doing a fantastic job of revamping all of our materials and getting great new content out there and helping our companies get more of a spotlight on them as well.
Yeah, amazing. And it sounds like that you and your team like genuinely care about being able to find the resources, events, etc., that will support the founders that you're working with. And I love that you're always like so close to the ground with being able to make those connections for people or plan an event on a topic that people want to learn more about. And I think that's really admirable and remarkable to like find and listen to and pay attention to what people are really struggling with and then create the resource or solution to support them.
Yeah, I always tell our founders, like, we're not going to be the biggest check that they ever receive in their rounds, but we want to be very meaningful partners and very intentional about listening to what our founders need and providing them with that support. I pride myself on being super founder focused. I run founder focus groups. Like, I'm constantly asking them for feedback, what went well, what you need more of. And I'm sure I annoy them, but I really just want to make sure we're making a meaningful impact, and helping them get to the milestones where they can kind of graduate our programs and go on to receive those bigger checks.
Totally. And one thing I'd love to ask you personally, since you are obviously in a career in VC and are also a part of a few wonderful communities for people in VC, is I'd love to hear your advice for anyone listening to this episode who'd like to pursue VC as a career path. That's one thing that I've been seeing a lot lately is people in tech who maybe they're founders or maybe they were builders and operators who are now switching gears and wanting to go down the venture path. And so, from what you've learned and experienced throughout your own career, I'd love to hear some advice and tips that you'd give for anyone following it as well.
Yeah. So I landed in VC by total accident. I before I started at Innovation Works, I'd heard of Shark Tank, like I knew what startups were, but I don't think I really truly understood. And I cut my teeth in marketing, so I'm a marketer by profession, and spent over a decade marketing across a ton of different agencies. Law firms, health insurance, engineers, you name it. Um, and then COVID happened, and I found myself laid off from my job, and I was like, what am I going to do? I found Innovation Works. I started in on the marketing team and really learned like Okay, startups aren't what you saw on like Silicon Valley on HBO, and their early stage startups are not Google. Like none of my companies can afford an office space, let alone like a ping pong table to like put there. And I got super interested in it. I wanted to learn the lingo. And so I read Venture Deals, I did the online Venture Deals course, and I just wanted to learn as much as I could. And then I learned about this platform side of things and founder support. And I was like, hey, like we should really like offer this for our founders and build out what this was. So yeah, I got here by total accident. But since being here, if people are interested in learning like more about platform, there is an amazing job board. So you want to work in platform. That does a great job aggregating like just a ton of platform and platform adjacent jobs, and venture adjacent jobs, run by Ali Mullen, who is amazing. I've had the opportunity to meet her through some of my conferences, and they've started doing some really wonderful events. So if you're looking to like break into venture, I highly recommend like following that job board and just following them on LinkedIn because they're always posting really, really great content. Um, and like I wouldn't underestimate the like reaching out to people cold on LinkedIn or like
Mhm.
finding groups that you're interested in, and just sending messages just to learn more. I think I mean we tell this to our companies too, like when you go out and you like ask for advice, you get money, but if you go out asking for money, you're going to get advice. But like have that kind of like humble attitude when you reach out and just genuinely be curious.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's how I like started building so many great connections and meeting wonderful people. It's just being genuinely curious about what other people are doing, how they got to where they are, and kind of building that network and that support system brick by brick.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, just being able to meet people and have an open mind. And also sounds like too that since you mentioned you fell into VC like totally unexpected, that you've probably also learned by doing as well. And I think it probably sounds like VC might be one of those things where it's like as you continue to get more integrated and work closely through it, like you'll just start to learn more things along the way.
Yeah, I think I've kind of found that is like even in this like VC, what it means is changing
Hmm.
constantly. Like, there's new funds coming up and there's always a new trend in the next hot market that people are following and being like what AI means and how that's changing like fund operations and all that. And it's just being genuinely curious and having that like desire to learn. And build amongst people, is how I found a really great community. So I think just kind of having that attitude of, being open to learning and um, VC is not a stagnant thing by any means. So,
Yeah.
just being ready to roll with the punches of it.
Yeah, 100%. And Jordan, one of my favorite questions to ask our guests is to give a shout out to someone in tech who's doing something cool right now. So it could be a founder, could be another VC, could be a builder or operator, but would love to hear who you're feeling really inspired by and admiring lately.
Oh my goodness, that's such a tough question for me.
I know you probably have so
Um,
many.
yeah, there's so many people and so many things that I could shout out with. Um, Oh my God, I want to name two people, but I don't want to be that
You can
person.
give two.
Type
Yeah,
of guy.
go for it.
Okay, so one person who I'm super, uh, who I love just to talk to on a regular basis, her name is Vera, and she's out of Next Few Ventures in New York. And we meet on a quarterly basis and just talk like, hey, what is the cool thing that you're doing with AI? And I've learned so much from her, and just like the way we've gotten connected is amazing. And I think she's doing totally awesome things. And Next View is an amazing fund. And then from the like startup side of things, of founders that I work with, I'm working with a company called Sensi Fit, and the founder, her name is Izzy Hunter, and she is a non-technical founder. She's actually a former pro football player, pro soccer player. She's from the UK,
Amazing.
and is in Pittsburgh now, and she's building um, a like athlete monitoring system. And just to see her come into this like the CEO role of from being an athlete and being like a CEO and running her business and just like making these leaps and bounds and like she's just so cool. And like, I think she's amazing. She's totally kicking butt right now. So I aspire to be like Izzy someday. She's one of those founders that like, I understand my customer, like I take my punches and just has that like great attitude. And I absolutely adore her.
Ah, love those. Good shout outs. Jordan, this has been such a fun episode, and I've so enjoyed having you on the show to share everything that you and your team at Innovation Works are doing. And I'd love to have you share with our listeners where they can find you online in case they'd like to connect.
Yeah, yep. You can find me on LinkedIn. I try to be super active there, but sometimes it takes me a while to get through all of my LinkedIn messages, but I'm always happy to connect there. Or just feel free to drop me an email. My email address is pretty easily accessible, but it's jordan@innovationworks.org. And try to respond to as many messages and inbounds that I get. But founders always come first. So sometimes it might take a little bit to get response from me because I am dealing with my founders.
Very fair. Thank you so much, Jordan, for again for coming on the Tech Startup Network podcast. This was so great.
Great. Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate you having me.